It could be a far-fetched idea.
Good evening. Hope everyone is doing well. 8:40, sorry, we're 20 seconds late. Tonight, we're going to be learning Maseches, Pesachim, Daf Kuf Zayin, and about 2/3 of Daf Kuf Ches Amud Aleph. As mentioned, the end of the week is going to be a little bit tighter, and I'll mention again in the beginning of the shiur that there will be no in-person shiur on Shabbos. We will be learning Motzei Shabbos instead, 8:40 on Zoom. Let us get started. We are about 10 lines down on Kuf Zayin Amud Aleph, and we were in the midst of discussing a sugya of a person ate before Kiddush, right, before Havdalah, what would the din be? So we're going to continue with connected sugyas, but one that I'll just refer to as Chamar Medina, because that's what the Gemara calls it. Famously, we know that if a person doesn't have wine and they have bread, you can make Kiddush on bread. That's not called Chamar Medina. That we saw in the Gemara yesterday is what Rav did when he preferred the challah, a good homemade challah. That's what he wants to do. What would happen by Havdalah? So that's what we're going to get into right now. 10 lines down, Kuf Zayin Amud Aleph. Amri Leimar Yanuku Mar Kshisha Bred Rav Chizda le Rav Ashi. Two children of Rav Chizda said to Rav Ashi, Zimnacha de Ikla Ameimar le'asrin. Ameimar once went to a particular place, machlokas, if it was in fact him or if it was actually Ravin. And they went to a particular place. V'lo havalon chamra. They didn't have any wine there. Aisina le shechra v'lo avdil. They brought him beer to make Havdalah, but he wasn't willing. V'lo avdil. He did not make Havdalah on that. And then says the Gemara, quoting from a pasuk in Daniel, Uvas Tivas, in the Rashbam, 5-6 lines down in the Rashbam, he says, Dibra Maschel Uvas Tivas, Lan Me'una. He went to sleep afflicted, starving. Inui, the language of Inui that we have in the Chamesh Yisrin by Yom Kippur. Uvas Tivas, he went to sleep hungry. Lamachar, in the morning, Tarachna, they worked very hard. Va'aisina lechamra, they finally found some wine. Va'avdil v'toimidi. That's part one of the story. So they tried to give him beer to make Havdalah. He wasn't willing. And then in the morning on Sunday, he hadn't eaten anything because that's the din. The din is that you're not allowed to eat before you make Havdalah, even if you're delayed. The reason the poskim say, as mentioned last night, the reason the poskim say is that even if it's not Saturday night, it's Sunday, it's Monday. But the reason why you're obligated to not eat is because the matirs always have Havdalah. Just make Havdalah if you're hungry. What's the big deal? It's not that difficult. Go find a drink. So that was part one of the story where they offered him beer and he said no. And then says, so you can do malacha. Absolutely. If you say Baruch HaMavdil ben Kodesh L'chol, you say Atachon Antanu, that's a matir for malacha. But the matir for achila is Havdalah ala kos. And without that, you're still not allowed to eat. So says the Gemara as follows. Lashana, the next year, we're 1/3 of the way down, Kuf Zayin Amud Aleph. Lashana, Su Ikla La'asr, and he came back to the same exact place for Shabbos. Okay. Lo havalon chamra, the market hadn't changed. There was still not a lot of wine in that particular city. Aisina shechra. And then the second year, they also brought him beer for Havdalah. And then he said to himself as follows, Omar, Ihachi, if this is true, chamar medinahu, avdil v'taimidi. If in fact it's true that this is chamar medina, this is the drink of the Medina, the chamar, the wine, quote unquote, this is what they drink. So then I'm allowed to make Havdalah on it. So the Gemara seems very clear that not only wine, that wine is not the only thing that one is allowed to drink in order to make Havdalah. What is one allowed to drink on? So let's first look in the Shulchan Aruch at the mark that's quoted here. So Chamar Medina in the Ein Mishpat Ner Mitzvah is quoted as Reish Tzadi Vav Sif Beis. Reish Tzadi Vav, the end of the Reish Tzadis is the halachos of Havdalah. And Reish Tzadi Vav Sif Beis, the Shulchan Aruch reads as follows. Ein mabdilan al hapas. One is not allowed to make Havdalah on bread. Aval al hashechar, on beer, mabdilin imhu chamar medina. One is allowed to make Havdalah on beer if it's considered a standard drink. This is true of all drinks with the exception of water. The Haggah writes, the Rama adds here, it's better to make Havdalah on a cup of wine that somebody drank from than it is to make Havdalah on Chamar Medina. So in fact, there is a preference in the poskim that one should make Havdalah not on Chamar Medina. So just interesting to note that there are some amazing collection of drinks that are included as Chamar Medina. Coffee and tea, some poskim write are allowed. The Piskei Teshuvos writes that milk is allowed. It's an unbelievable collection. Rav Moshe Feinstein has a tshuva where he's pretty strong about this, that you cannot use soda. I don't mean soda like carbonated soda. I mean, even Coke or Diet Coke, something that has a color to it, it doesn't make a difference. He considers them water, halachically speaking. not to say that they're healthy for you because it doesn't make them any healthier. But halachically speaking, it's considered like water. And as the Shulchan Aruch writes, water is never going to be appropriate to make Havdalah on. So that's Chamar Medina. A lot of nuance here, but for another time. Says the Gemara almost halfway down, Shema Mina Tzalas, we learned 3 things from this story about Rav Ashi. What are the 3 things we learned? Shema Mina Mavdil B'Tfil Tzarch She'avdil Alakos, something we've seen already. We presumed that he had already said Ma'ariv, he already said Atachon Antanu, why you have to make Havdalah? He wouldn't eat. So we see that you have to make Havdalah Alakos. Shema Mina Asr Adam Sheyochal Kodem She'avdil. We also learn that one is not allowed to eat until they make Havdalah. That one is allowed to make Havdalah throughout the week if you miss the opportunity to do so on Motzei Shabbos. Good. That's the end of the sugya of Chamar Medina. There are a whole bunch of drinks that fall into the questionable category. Apple juice is less common. What about grapefruit juice? All the shilas, you have to ask your local Orthodox rabbi what's considered to be Chamar Medina. The way that some Meforshim explain Chamar Medina, I think some of the Meforshim here explain this as well, is the Chamar Medina is defined as that which you'd give an oreach, like a standard drink, which is, that puts Coke back into question. We serve that at our table. Some say it's only that which you drink when you're thirsty. But I don't drink coffee when I'm, the opposite, that which you drink, not for thirst. Thank you. Where did you see that? Did we discuss this yesterday? No? You just remember? Okay. Yeah, it's the opposite. It's not that what you drink for when you're thirsty. It's that what you drink when you dafka are not thirsty. I don't drink coffee because I'm thirsty. I drink coffee because I'm a caffeine addict. It's totally a separate, disconnected reason. But it's not because I'm thirsty. Okay, they have to get into this. All right, let's continue. Where's footprints? So it says the Gemara, Mahu lekidushe ashechra. What about making kiddush on beer? All right, we spoke about Havdalah on beer, and maybe the answer is yes. But what about making kiddush on beer? So we know in the Shulchan Aruch already this is not going to work. But let's see what the Gemara says halfway down. Omar, he says, Hashta Uma, just like these following 3 types of beer, Pirzuma, Viteine, Ve'asne. The Rashbam here goes through what all these are. Deboimine Rav, the Talmidim asked Rav what he thought about it, and Rav didn't know. Rav mi Rebbe, mi Rav Chia, Rav asked Rav Chia, Rav Chia mi Rebbe. They brought the Shaila all the way up to the Gdolei Ador. Below Pashat Levi didn't have an answer there. Then Shichra mi Boya. If these 3 types of beer, which are chashuva beers, the Rashbam points out, these are chashuva types of beer. And there, even Rebbe said, like, listen, I'm not really sure. You're better off not making than regular. You're going to take a regular beer off the counter and make it. No way. If it's low pasha by the chashuva beers, pasha by the regular beers, it's not going to work. Shichra meboya. So savar mina, 4 lines up before the lines get wide. Savar mina. What can we learn from here? It seems to imply that kedushehu delo makdashinan. That yes, it's correct that you're not allowed to use beer to make kiddush ilave. However, aval avdule mavdalinan, but one is allowed to make havdalah on beer, and in fact, of course, that is how we paskin. Amar lu Rav Chizda, not necessarily. Hachi amar Rav. As there are some other shitas, kishem shein mekachin alav, kach ein mavdilan alav. There are other shitas that say the beer is not allowed. Not everything is considered. We don't know the lumdus here. Is it because of Chamar Medina? Maybe they didn't drink beer there. Is it just a practical thing that they didn't drink beer, so therefore? So we'll see some stories later that may indicate that way, but lav dafka, we don't really know what's happening here. Last of the short lines, Itmar Nami, another statement from the times of the Amoraim. Amar Rav Tachlifa bar Avimi Amar Shmuel, Kashem she'en mekachin alav, just like you can't make kiddush on beer kachin mavdilan alav, another same shita we saw earlier. Levi, Shadar Leila Rebbe, Shichra bar Tleisar Magne. Levi and Bar Kapara were the authors of the Tosefta. So Levi and lived in a similar time as Rebbe. Look who he's talking to. Levi Shadar Leila Rebbe. He sent to Rebbe a gift of beer of Bar Tleisar Magne. The Rashbam here points out, the Rashbam is about 15, 20 lines from the bottom of the page. At the end of the Dibur Maschel Tleisar Magne, there the Rashbam writes, you break open dates 13 times. It gives a lot of flavor, basically. It's a very flavorful drink. That's what Levi gave to Rebbe. So Rebbe tasted it, second of the wide lines, 2/3 of the way down. Ta'ameh, Rebbe tasted it. Have a basim tuva. It was very flavorful. Besamim, a lot of good geschmack smell and a great taste to it. Omar kigon zeh. You're talking about a beer like this kind of beer. You can for sure make kiddush on this. This is the spitz. This is the best drink under the sun. This is amazing. But then the night hit. Then by nighttime, his stomach was killing him. He couldn't even handle the pain. Omar, Meisran, it's going to put me through all these Yisurim and Mafayis. Absolutely not. You're not allowed to make kiddush on. And that's one of the reasons why he says that you're not allowed to make kiddush on, because this is not the right thing. You want to talk about chashuv, a bottle of wine? I got it. I understand. By the way, the poskim discuss whether or not grape juice has the status of wine. Because according to some of the poskim by Hilchos Pesach, the wine that we use for the Dalet Kosos has to be meshaker. It has to be able to have the capacity to make a person drunk. It has to have some alcohol in it. And grape juice is, I give it to my kids all the time. So there's no alcohol in that. So, okay, so sometimes what we do, like I can't handle a full cup. So I would like mix grape juice with regular wine. That's considered a blend already. That's fine. That's for sure no problem. But pure grape juice. Yeah. You're literally sitting in the bag like, no. So that's what the Gemara.
You can't do it.
No, I can't. It won't be yotzei any mitzvos hayom. So that's what the Gemara says. That's what some of the poskim say, that by the Dalet Kosos it has to be yain hamashaker. Okay, so he says Amar miyasrin umefayis. No way, this can't be used for wine. This type of beer is very hard on the stomach. Amar Rav Yosef adur berabim. I'm going to say out loud in public. He'll make a neder in public that he wasn't going to drink beer. Amar Rava, the next generation. Rav Yosef was third generation. Rava was fourth. Ishte me zurian velo ishte shichra. I'd rather drink flax water than drink, or that's what the Rashbam calls it, than to drink beer. Amar Rava tehave shakiyusa shichra mandamekadesh shichra. Your drink should be a drink of beer if you make kiddush on beer. So this, the Meforshim, is not a simple line to understand. It took me some research to figure this out. Is that man demekadesh shichra, a person who's willing to make kiddush on the cheaper product of beer, because wine is more expensive than beer, then that should be a punishment for anius, mida keneged mida, that the only drink you'll ever be able to get is beer. So that, obviously it's a lower grade, a lower quality type of drink, and therefore one should not use beer. Rav Ashkeche Rav Huna dekadesh shichra. Rav saw that Rav Huna was making kiddush on beer. Amar le shari abba lemikne istre mishichra. That's because you have been purchasing coins. You've been making money off the deal. So by you, beer is considered to be a chashuv azach because it led to having deeper pockets. You were trading stock in beer. Of course, you're going to like beer. If that's what gave you your wealth, you're going to find more chashivus in it. Tanu Rabbanan, 10, 12 lines from the bottom. Tanu Rabbanan, ein mekachin. It's a very difficult Gemara to understand. We're about to read. The Gemara will ask and answer. Ein mekachin ela al hayayin. That part's easy. Can't make kiddush unless it's wine. Vein mevarchen ela al hayayin. But you only make a bracha on wine, implying you don't make a bracha on other foods. Atu ashichra ve'amaya milo mevarchinan alayhu shehakol nieh bidvaro. What, wine is the only thing that gets a bracha, that gets a borei priagafen, but beer and water don't get a shehakol? So says the Gemara, Amar Abaye, your question is very good. You misunderstood the brayso. So let's pivot and understand correctly. Hachik Amar, the Gemara says as follows. Ein omrim, we would not say the following. Have kos shel bracha levarech. Bring me a cup of something to make a bracha on, to make benching on. Ela al hayayin. That's what it doesn't mean. Don't make a bracha. It means the kos shel bracha should be that which is wine and not from other drinks. Good. So the brisa continues. Mat'imas yayin kol shehu. How much wine do you have to drink? Just a little bit, just enough to. What? Oh, thank you. Tanu Rabbanan. Yes, Tanu Rabbanan in mekachin al hasheichar. One is not supposed to make kiddush on beer. Another brisa, Rabbi Eliezer, Mishum, Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Elazar bar Reb Shimon Amru, Mekachin. He says, in fact, you do. When one drinks the wine, how much do they have to drink? Mat'imas yayin kolshu. You only have to drink a little bit, just enough to be yotzei the bracha. Halacha l'maisa. If a person makes a bracha rishona, they should swallow the food to have what's called hanas garon. That's what the poskim write is the ikar by brachos. So there's always a shaila that comes up. Let's say a person makes a bracha on the food. They're in the middle of a conversation. They start chewing the food and they start talking. So that's not ideal, because if really the ikar of the actual kiyum of making a bracha is on the hanas garon, is the enjoyment of swallowing the food. So then no, you're not supposed to talk at that point. The poskim do write that if you do talk while you're chewing on the food after the bracha, but before you swallow, you should not make a new bracha, because there are shitas in the poskim that the hana in the mouth is close enough to hanas garon. But afal pikein, it is not the ideal. The ideal is that when a person makes a bracha rishona, you should not speak until you swallow the food. Anyways, that's what the Tanakama here holds. However, Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda Omer Malo Lugma, you should make sure that you have a cheek full of wine. Take a look at Tosfos. Dibur hamaschil im ta'am lo lugma yatza. We didn't even get to that line yet, but it's all the same. Look at the very end of Tosfos. The dafkal adam benoni aval og melech habashan boit fei kedarin an hasam. If you are a very large person like Og Melech HaBashan, your Melo Lugmav is just relative. If you have a huge mouth, good, yeah, you're able to drink you can hold 6-7 ounces of liquid in your mouth at a time. Okay, good, Givaldik, then you have a bigger Melo Lugmav than everybody else. So that's a machlokes haposkim. Not everyone agrees with this Tosfos. There are other Rishonim who say that that's not true. Melo Lugmav is an objective shiur. It's what would be a cheekful for the average Beinoni person. We don't know. Usually we say Bad Ladai to Eitzel Kol Adam, that one guy, we don't look at the exception to the rule. So this should be true here as well. So anyway, Tosfos doesn't hold that way. Tosfos says that yes, it's relative. The Melo Lugmav is relative. Masha'in Kain other Meforshim, other Rishonim hold that it is an objective standard. 6 lines from the bottom. Kuv Zayin Amar Aleph. Amar Rav Huna Amar Rab. V'chein Tani Rav Gidol Demin Narash. Rav Gidol from the city of Narash says, "Hamakadesh v'ta melo lugma yatza v'im lav lo yatza." Only if you had a melo lugma, and this is how we paskin, of course, as well. Not by bracha rishona, but to be yotze kiddush it's different. It's not just birchas hanehenin; it's also to be yotze the mitzvah of kiddush. So if you're just trying to be yotze a birchos hanehenin, then everyone agrees that all you need is a little bit of te'ima, enough that you can swallow the wine. But if what you're trying to be doing is yotze a kos shel bracha kiddush, then you need malo lugma, and it's le'ikuva. And if a person does not drink malo lugma, this comes up a lot. Sometimes at the table, one of my kids says, "I only want one bite of bread." You're not yotze the Sudas Shabbos. That's a mitzvah derabanan to have a suda. You're not yotze. You're not allowed to bench. Benching is usher if all you eat is one bite of bread. You need to have a kazayis, or close enough that there's a suffix. But to say that you are allowed to bench, it's one bracha levatal after the next. It's not allowed. So the same would be true here. If you're the mavarich, so sometimes people say, Rabbi Robinson, we were with him on Shabbos. He didn't want to drink the grape juice that we had. Whatever was said, can someone else just make kiddush? I think that's what ended up happening in the end. They make it? I don't remember. I don't remember what ended up happening, but he was uncomfortable because I don't think he wanted to drink the wine itself. So I think somebody else, I don't remember what happened.
I think there's something with, 2 weeks ago, you had to drink 2 set revius because you didn't want to have zonos.
Right. Yeah, that's Kiddush B'Makom Suda. That was last week. So
zonos and he didn't want to, I don't know.
He couldn't eat the mazonas there anyways because of food intolerance. So, but maybe that, I don't know. Maybe he didn't want to drink a double revius. But yeah, if a person, that's a kula that we rely upon, that if a person wants to have Kiddush B'Makom Suda, we know that if you say Kiddush, you have to have a Suda that follows. But if you can't eat any mazonos and all you have is wine, so drink a lot of wine. Drink 2 revios of wine. According to the lenient shitas, that would be 3.3 ounces times 2, 6.6 ounces of wine, and that will help that person to fulfill the mitzvah of Kiddush B'Makom, the requirement, I should say, of Kiddush B'Makom.
So do you have 8 cups of wine on Pesach, instead of 4 cups and some matzah?
Sorry, you can't blend the matzah mitzvah into the cups.
And you can't dip the matzah in the wine.
Purim is behind us, Mark. That's Purim Torah right there. That's so that's what the Gemara says in the name of Rav Neresh. 4 lines from the bottom. Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. I agree with what you said, but it's not Rav Gidol Demi Neresh. Ana Tanina lo Gidol bar Menasya velo Gidule bar Minyumi no Gidule. I didn't say with anyone's last name. Ela Gidol Stama. That was his first name. Lamay Nafkamina. Why? Because Lemirma Didea the Meforshim said that there was a machlokas between 2 statements of Rav Gidol, and therefore this brisa was without the name of Rav Gidol. So therefore it's lav dafka that it's a stira. That was just to avoid a secondary issue that might have been involved here. So we started this parak many blot ago, almost 10 blot ago. What daf did this start on? Daf Tzadi Test. So we're on Kuv Zayin, and it says on 2 lines from the bottom, Kuv Zayin Amar Aleph, it's speaking about Samach L'Mincha. So if you flip back to, you don't have to, but I'll just read it for you. Tzadi Testament base was where this parak began. Parak Arbe Pesachim. The first Mishnah reads, Erev Pesachim Samach L'Mincha lo yochal adam ad shetechshach. That if once it's Samach L'Mincha, that a person is not supposed to eat anymore prior to Pesach. That's what it says, until it gets dark out. So Rashi there on Tzadi Testament base says, because Kedei sheyochal matzah shel mitzvah l'te'avon, mishum hidur mitzvah, that there's a hidur mitzvah to eat matzah b'te'avon. Beautiful, a hidur mitzvah. Good. So that's what the Gemara is dealing with now in Kuv Zayin Amar Aleph, all the way at the bottom 2 lines from that of Samach Mincha. What did it mean, Samach Mincha? We know that there's 2 mincha. There's mincha gdola by the middle of the day, 30 minutes after chatzos. And there's also mincha ktana, which is at 9.5 hours. So which one are we talking about? The Gemara is going to ask a question. Samach lemincha gdola tanan, o dilma samach lemincha ktana tanan. Are we talking about the earlier mincha or the later mincha? Again, a restriction to not eat from samach lemincha until the time of darkness. Are we saying that restriction of achila begins at 30 minutes past chatzos at 6.5 hours, or are we saying it's by 9.5 hours by mincha ktana? Which one is it? Good. That's the Gemara's question. Says the Gemara to articulate the question with still more nuance. Last line, Kuv Zayin Amud Aleph, Samach lemincha tnan. Samach lemincha gdola tnan umishum Pesach. Is your concern? I think it's a beautiful frame of the question. When we say that maybe we're concerned about mincha gdola, so maybe what happens close to mincha gdola? The korban Pesach, because it happens right after chatzos. So maybe samach lemincha gdola tnan umishum Pesach dilma asi lemimshach. The asi leimnu yemi leme'avad pischa, top of Kuv Zayin Amud Beis. Maybe the deeper concern here, and the reason why the Mishnah on Tzadi Testament Beis, the beginning of our Pesachim, says you're not allowed to eat from the mincha gdola and on, is because we're concerned about the korban Pesach. You might come to make a mistake. Oh, Dilma, says the Gemara, maybe no. Maybe it's not about the korban Pesach at all. Oh, Dilma samach lemincha ktana tnan umishum matzah. Really, it's later in the day. It's the 9.5 hour mark, and samach lemincha within a half hour of, basically from the 9th hour of the day, a half hour prior to mincha ktana. That's when you have to stop. Why? Mishum matzah. Dilma asi lemichla lematzah achila gasa. Because if you're full when you get to the mitzvah of matzah, then and you're ready, then it's achila gasa. You're not eating b'tei avol. That's the whole reason why we have the samach lemincha rule to start with. That was Rashi on Tzadi Tes, like we just reviewed. So which one is it? Do we say that the limitation of the mincha of the Mishnah on Tzadi Tes is mincha gdola right in the middle of the day at 6.5 hours because we're concerned that maybe you'll delay the korban Pesach? Or no, do we say it's the later mark in the day of mincha ktana because not about the korban Pesach? No one's concerned about that, but we're instead concerned of the issue that if you eat later in the day, then maybe you'll end up being full by the time you get to the achilas matzah, and that's not a hidur mitzvah. That's not right. So answers the Gemara 3 lines down. Kuv Zayin Amud Beis Amar Ravina Tashma. Afilu Agrippas Hamelach shehu ragil lechol b'teisha shos oso hayom lo yochal ad shetechshach. Even Agrippas Hamelach, he would sleep late. So even he who would normally eat at the 9th hour of the day, on that day he would not eat ad shetechshach. End of brisa. Now let's analyze. If you want to say that what samach lemincha means is at the 9th hour, meaning near mincha ktana, 9.5 hours mincha ktana, samach lemincha is 9 hours. That's when Agrippas would normally eat. Now he's not eating. Perfect. Hainu revuse de Agrippas. That's the whole point of the price of Agrippas, because Agrippas was saying that he normally eats at hour 9. This not on Yudal Nisan. Why? Because of the Mishnah on Tzadi Tes, it says samach lemincha. Which mincha? Obviously mincha ktana. Eliyamr samach lemincha gdola tnan. My revuse de Agrippas. But if you say that Agrippas, if you want to say that our Mishnah, when it says that there's a restriction to eat samach lemincha, that it's mincha gdola by chatzos, that doesn't help because chal iser alei mi'ikara. He's not allowed to eat anyways from an earlier concern about the korban Pesach. Done. You're done. If the Isser Derabanan of Samach Lemincha is by Chatzos, by Mincha Gdola, then we learn nothing from Agrippas. So that whole thing doesn't make sense anyways. Ella, it must therefore be, says the Gemara, Samach Lemincha Ktana Tnan. It must be that we're talking about that later time of 9.5 hours, and 9.5 is Mincha Ktana, and Samach Lemincha is the 9th hour. That's when Agrippas would stop eating, and that's when we should stop eating as well. Says the Gemara, still, I don't understand your whole thing here. Sof, my Ravu say the Agrippas. Hamatya leis manisur. I still don't understand. It's usher for him to eat. Mimanav shach, it's usher for him to eat. If it wasn't for mincha ktana, for mincha gdola, then it's usher because of mincha ktana. But then it's usher anyways. We learn nothing from him no matter what. So says the Gemara, Ma'u detema teisha shos le'Agrippas ke'arba shos didan dami. Maybe we would have argued that 9 hours, meaning a half hour before Mincha Ktana, is like the 4th hour, the hour before the Isser Derabanan of Achilas Matzah. Maybe we should say they're the same and you should not eat during that 4th hour as well. Maybe, says the Gemara, Kamash Malan, that's not true. Now, it's true that you can't eat full meals. That's correct. However, says the Gemara, 2/3 of the way down, Kuv Zayin Amud Beis, Amar Rav Yosi, and according to some, Rav Asi. What does it say in your Gemara? Does it say Rav Yosi or Rav Asi? Here it says Hagos V'Tzionim. It says Rav Asi. Okay. Yeah. So that's that makes sense here. So then it should be Amar Rav Asi then. So Amar Rav Asi. Aval, it's true you can't eat full meals. Aval matbil hu b'mine targima. You're allowed to eat mine targima. What are mine targima? Take a look at Tosfos. Second Tosfos from the bottom. Dibra mascha mine targima. Piresh Rashbam. The Rashbam writes peiros ubasar below lechem. You're just eating peiros ubasar, fruits with meat. Good. With no bread. Velo nehira. Tosfos doesn't agree. Damrina b'tosefta deketzad mevorchen. We learned in Maseches brachos. Hiviu lefana mine targima mevorech bori mine zonos. Oh, so mina targima is whatever. It's a snack. You're having some cookies from the bakery. We only make the bracha bar minei mezonos on b'chameshes minei dagan, barley, rye, oat, wheat, spelt. Otherwise, no, except and rice, right? Except the famous addition. We spoke about that sugi as well. There are various explanations of what the word targima means. In short, if we were to look at the Gemara, we're still not sure what the word targima means because Tosfos throws us around. But there are a lot of different definitions. It could be fruits and vegetables, it could be meat, and it could be mezonos. Don't know. But that's what the Gemara says. You're allowed to eat a little bit. Rabbi Yitzchak, matbil biyarke, he would dip things into vegetables. That's very interesting because that's what happens at the Seder night that night. Okay, but it's not restricted because there's no requirement to not do tefillah. Even though the manishtana is like tonight, okay, good, but that's really not a raya. Tanya Nami Hachi, the Brisa supports this idea of eating during the day. Ashamish, matbil livnei me'ayin v'nosan livnei orchim. As he's preparing the animal, there are some kishka that he might want to serve, and you're allowed to give that to other people. Even though it's true that there's no explicit raya that one should eat during that day, it is appropriate to do so. Shnei Amar, a pasuk that reads as follows. Niro lachem nir va'al tizra'u el kotzim. You should plow the field, but you shouldn't be with thorns. What does that mean? It means you're preparing food. It's a mashal. You're preparing food. You're allowed to eat a little bit. It's good for you. Just eat a little bit, but don't stuff your face. 4 lines from the bottom. Kuv Zayin Amud Beis. The Gemara says, Rava have a shasi chamra kol ma'ala yom pescha. He would drink wine all day on Erev Pesach, ki hechi de nigrere lelibe, so that he would draw his heart after the mitzvah of achilas matzah, denechul matzah tfei leurta, so that he would eat a lot of matzah at night. So some of the Meforshim are bothered by the word tfei. What do you mean he'd eat a lot of matzah at night? Is it mitzvah to eat 10 kezesim? Is the tfei on the matzah or is the tfei on the te'av, on the desire? So that's a discussion here too. What's actually meant here? There's no mitzvah to. What?
The desire. He drank so much. His desire. He needs to eat. He's even more eating. He has the munchies. That's the point.
No, but it sounds like a denechol matzah tfei le'urteg, that he'd eat more matzah. It sounds, this isn't me, I'm saying some before should pick up on this. The language, it sounds like they're talking about volume of food, which is irrelevant. Right. There's minimum shiur. Once you hit the bracket, you're done. You've eaten enough. All right, it's just a small little error on the language here about what matzah tfei actually means.
Bottom line, we should drink wine on our face.
That's what Rava did. Amar Rava, mino aminola dechamra migrar gorir. How do I know that wine actually creates hunger? So says the Gemara, Ditznan. Bein hakosos halalu, between these 2 cups, for this we need Rashi, bein harishon l'sheni, between cup number 1 and cup number 2, imratza lishtos yishte. If someone wants to drink wine, they can, no problem. Bein shlishi l'revi lo yishte, but between the 3rd and 4th cup, you should not drink. The amris misad sa'id, but if in fact you say that it's misad sa'id, that it doesn't make you hungry, but it satiates you like a seuda, that it fills you up, why should you be able to drink between cup number 1 and cup number 2? You haven't fulfilled the mitzvah of matzah yet. So if it's filling you up, then it should not be allowed. Therefore, says the Gemara, if you were to in fact drink that wine, then by the time you get to the matzah, you're going to be full. Therefore, Ella, 4th line, Shema Mina, Nigrar Garir. It must therefore be the case that it increases your appetite. Rav Sheshes, this was more my approach, Rav Sheshes. Rav Sheshes have a yasi b'ta'anisa kol ma'al yom pesach. He would fast the whole day on Erev Pesach. Neima kasava Rav Sheshes. This is going to be a long-winded, multi-stepped argument, not difficult, but I'm just prepping you for the next 5 lines. Neima kasava Rav Sheshes. Maybe Rav Sheshes says samach lemincha gdola tnan. Maybe the reason why he fasted all day was because he was concerned about the korban pesach that would be near chatzos. Umishum pischahu. Dilma mimshach vasi liimnui milamevad pischahu. And we were just concerned, even from the morning, don't eat, fast the whole day, so that you don't end up missing the korban pesach. V'savar laki adam Rabbi Yeshua Amar Rabbi Lazar machshir hayah ben beser bepesach sheshachto shachris ba'arbasar lishmo. That if someone brings a korban pesach in the morning, even before chatzos, but it was lishma, that it counts. Umitzafrazman pischahu. The morning is even a time for Pesach. The kula yomachazi lepischa. Really, all of your dalit is disavar bein ha'arbaim. What does the pasuk mean when it says bein ha'arbaim? It means bein erev de esmo le erev de ha'idna. It just means between last night and now. If all of that is true, maybe that's why Rosh Hashanah fasted, because in theory, you could have brought the korban the morning of Yudalit. It would have counted. Safar is chazile. The morning is an appropriate time to bring the korban. All of these various factors, maybe that's why Rosh Hashanah fasted. Says the Gemara, no. Amrei lo, that's not correct. Shiny Rav Sheshes to Istanis Hava. Rav Sheshes was an Istanis. This word gets thrown around a little bit. Sometimes it means a person is like a little compulsive. This just means he gets full very quickly. The time bitzafra midi, if he were to eat anything in the morning, leurta, even at night, lo hava mahana mechla. He would not have enjoyed his food. He gets full. When I know that I have to go to Shalat tonight, I push it, barely eat the whole day. Because I can't, even then I won't finish my food. So that's this, is that he was saying, no, this has nothing to do, you cannot bring a raya from here at all about mincha tana versus mincha gdola. I get full easily. So because I get full easily, says Rosh Hashanah, I'm going to fast the whole day so that I can be nichnas l'teyava. Beautiful. I wasn't planning on doing this, and I told Michael Feeder that I'm going to stop here, but I'm not stopping here because we still have a couple minutes left, and the blot are getting bigger ahead of us. So we're going to learn a little bit more. We're going to start the sugya of heseba. We'll learn some of the basics tonight about leaning, where we lean, and we'll get into more halachic mari makomos tomorrow. 1/3 of the way down, Kufches Amud Aleph. 2 dots. This was also the Mishnah on Sadi Test. The Mishnah there writes we need to be yesef. The word heseba means to lean. Of course, we'll see in the Gemara later that we know that we're supposed to lean to our left, because the esophagus is going to be to the left. That's the food pipe. So we want to make sure the food goes down there instead of the windpipe. They're actually not perfectly aligned. They're slightly misaligned in that way. And that's why we lean to the left. But we do need to lean. Where do we need to lean? So that's what the Gemara is going to deal with right now. It says the Gemara, 2 dots, 1/3 of the way down. Itmar matzah sarcha seba. When you eat matzah, you need to lean. Maror ain't sarcha seba. But when it comes to maror, you don't need to lean. Yayin, what about the wine? That's a machlokas. Itmar mishmei de Rav Nachman sarcha seba. Itmar mishmei de Rav Nachman ain't sarcha seba. 2 shitas within Rav Nachman. One says lean, one says don't. Velo pligi. Wow, that's amazing. How could one person say 2 opposite things and it's not a machlokas? Well, thankfully, we have 4 cups of wine to go around. Velo pligi, habitarte kase kama, kamoi, habitarte kase basroi. One sheet of Rav Nachman is on the first 2 cups that you don't have to lean, or maybe you do have to lean. We'll see which one is which. That's what the Gemara is going to go through right now. The point is that for 2 of the cups, Rav Nachman says lean. For 2 of them, you don't have to lean. Which one's which? Amrei la lahai gisa, v'amrei la lahai gisa. And there's 2 different ways to understand Rav Nachman. Do we say the first 2 cups are the ones where you lean and the second cups no? Or do we say the first 2 cups are where you don't lean and the second cup is where you do lean? So let's analyze halfway down. Amrei la lahai gisa, approach number 1, halfway down. Trei kase kamae bo heseba. The first 2 cups of wine that we drink, bo heseba, we lean to the left. By the way, you should not be leaning into the air. You should be leaning on something, elbow down, put the back of a chair under your arm, something that's actually supporting you. Because right from the beginning, this is where the Cherus actually began. Now, Yitzias Mitzrayim, even within the flow of the Haggadah, hasn't happened yet, but that's Shita number 1. Trei Kase Basrei Lo Bo Eseba Maida Hava Hava. It's over. You finished the Haggadah. The whole thing's over now. So you don't need to lean under those circumstances. And 2/3 of the way down, the second approach, Rami Lo Lahai Gisa, here's another approach to say how we understand Rav Nachman. Ada Rabba. Trei Kase Basrei Bo Heseba. The second set of cups require heseba because hahi shaita the kahav yacherus. At that point, you're actually free. That's when the Haggadah is over. But hahi shaita the kahav but trei kase kamoi lo bo heseba. Why by the first 2 cups of wine would you not need heseba? De akati avadim hayinu ka'amar. That's mamish the opening of the Haggadah. So you're saying avadim hayinu and you're leaning? No, you're an eved. You're not there yet. So then says the Gemara, a blended answer. This is an uncommon approach. Hashta de itmar hachi, because we have these 2 different variant approaches. According to approach number 1, the first 2 cups get heseba and the second 2 don't. According to approach number 2, the first 2 cups don't get heseba and the second 2 do. And because we have both of those directions, edi bo heseba. Therefore, we lean for all 4 cups of wine because we weren't sure how to understand the shita of Rav Nachman. We'll stop right here at Praktan on Kufches Amud Aleph. Yirtzeh Hashem will pick up tomorrow with another blot and a half and try to get to the bottom of Kuftes Amud Beis, and will be a blot ahead, which will really help tremendously as we get to the weekend. Wishing you all a beautiful night.